All right. All right. Settle down. Settle down. Take it easy. That's enough. That's enough applause. Thank you. Thank you very much. You people are unbelievable. Really. A beautiful crowd, dead eyed, financially compromised, lower middle tier creative professionals. My people. Tonight, I'm going to help you with something nobody else in comedy has the guts, the brains, or the emotional instability to talk about taxes. That's right, taxes. The thing every working comic fears most, right after silence, sobriety, and seeing their richer, funnier brother buy a second home. Not me, I ask. I ask all the time because I'm a numbers guy. I always have been. Ever since I was a kid, watching my father count nickels, watching him count nickels at the kitchen table like he was auditing the Pentagon. That's where I learned the important things resentment, arithmetic, and the smell of loose change. And today I'm going to tell you the secret that the government does not want working comedians to know. The best day to file your taxes is April 16th. One day late. Now, before all the nerds start going, Kevin Brennananski, that's after the deadline. Exactly. That's why it's genius. Go ahead. No, nothing. Tough room. Very intelligent. Very threatened. See, everybody files on April 15th. That's what they want. That's the cattle chute. That's the funnel. That's the bureaucratic water slide into the gray pool of obedience. April 15th. That's for accountants, dentists, and guys who say worksheet. But April 16th, that's for disruptors. That's for innovators. That's for comics who have performed in Dayton for a chili dog and know the system is rigged. When you file on April 16th, you're telling the IRS, I'm not just a taxpayer, I'm an artist. An artist with receipts in a sandwich bag. And that, my friends, is leverage. Now let's start with the basics. You got a 1099, maybe one, maybe six, maybe 37. Because every club owner in America thinks payroll is communism. A 1099 is a little piece of paper the government sends you to say, we noticed you were paid, unfortunately. And if you're a comic, that 1099 can be confusing because comedy is not a profession built on clarity. It's built on ego, parking fees, and saying great set to a man you watched bomb. So, what do you do with a 1099? Simple. First, you put it on the table. Then you stare at it. Then you make coffee. Then you lose it. Then you find it under a Buffalo Wild Wings receipt from 2022 and say, business. That's step one. Step two, classify your income properly. There are three kinds of income for a working comedian. Number one, money. Number two, drink tickets. Number three, exposure. Now, technically, only one of those is legal tender, but emotionally, they all hurt the same. People ask, how do I report drink tickets? You don't. You frame them. That's your pension. No, nobody. All right. A lot of accountants in the room tonight. Very sad. Now, if you made under a certain amount, there's a little known loophole called being too exhausted to deal with it. I used it for years, still do, spiritually, but let me explain why April 16th is ideal. On April 15th, everybody's filing. The IRS is slammed. Their servers are humming. Their interns are panicking. Somebody in Kansas is crying into a stack of W-2s. It's chaos. April 16th. It's quiet. It's intimate. That's when your return lands like a velvet thread. That's when they read it slow. And when they read it slow, they respect you. You know who files early? People with hope. You know who files late? Men who have looked directly into the fluorescent void of a La Quinta continental breakfast and lived to tell the tale. Now let's talk deductions. This is where a lot of comics leave money on the table because they're idiots. Lovable idiots, sure, but still idiots. They deduct the obvious stuff: gas, hotels, airfare. Wrong. You have to think bigger. And for example, did you buy a black t-shirt? Yeah, but that's a uniform. Did you buy a notebook and write one bad premise like, what if squirrels had mortgages? Did you sit in traffic and think about quitting? That's mileage. Did you stand outside a club in the rain, wondering why you get a stool next to a mop sink? Home office. That's what they don't teach you. You have to understand the spirit of the tax code, not the letter. The spirit, the ghost in the machine, the whisper in the ledger, the stale, papery breath of the republic moving through a manila folder. Taxes aren't math. They're theater. And if there's one thing comedians understand, it's pretending something sad is actually a career. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. Now, a lot of people ask, Kevin Brennananski, should I keep receipts? No. And yes. And neither. Here's my system. Never organize them. That makes you look guilty. But do keep them in strange places: coat pockets, glove boxes, guitar cases, one shoebox marked wires, one envelope with grease on it. The point is to create an archaeological tax record. If the IRS ever asks, you don't hand them a spreadsheet. You hand them a saga. You say, this CVS receipt, that was from the night I drove to Toledo to do 11 minutes for divorce contractors. You can't put that in Excel, and they can't. That's art. Now, let me address the question. Should you form an LLC? Yes, no, maybe. Form 3, one for comedy, one for spite, one to hold the emotional liabilities associated with your brother's success. That's asset protection. You don't want all your resentment under one roof. That's amateur hour. And when you name the LLC, make it professional, something with gravitas, like Brennananski Global Holdings, or Sad Lantern Media, or Nichols and Rage Incorporated. You laugh. But these names tell the government you are a serious businessman with a folding chair and a mailing address that keeps changing. Now, here's another big tax tip: estimated taxes. When people say, should I pay quarterly estimated taxes? I say, absolutely, estimate wildly. Make it emotional. Don't use numbers, use vibes. Quarter 1, job pretty good. Quarter 2, not great. Quarter 3, road work and allergies. Quarter 4, well, I asked my agent. Well, that's a tax narrative. That's better than numbers because numbers can be challenged. Feelings harder. And yes, I know what you're thinking. None of this sounds right. That's because you've been brainwashed by big calendar. You think deadlines are real. You think forms matter. No, the government wants confidence. That's why April 16th is so powerful. It says, I considered your deadline and found it emotionally limiting. And there's something deeply American about that. Now let's talk dependence. A lot of comics don't realize they can't claim other comedians as dependents, even if they buy them mozzarella sticks after a bringer show. Believe me, I checked. I tried all of it. None of it held up. But spiritually, everybody in comedy is somebody else's dependent. That's the business. Now, when it comes time to actually file, don't panic. Become furious at every question. Did you have business income? Now, what kind of question is that? Define business, define income, define had. This is where people crumble, not me. I thrive in administrative hostility. When it asks for occupation, be honest. Put comedian if you're bold. Put performer if you want dignity. Put consultant if you want your bank to stop asking questions. And if you made no money, put legacy talent. A lot of people say, well, why not just file an extension? Because an extension is permission. April 16th is rebellion. An extension says, may I have more time, sir? April 16th says, you'll hear from me when the smoke clears. That's masculinity. That's finance. That's what my father understood every time he counted coins like the rest of the world owed him an apology. And look, do I know a lot about taxes? No. Do I know more than the average comedian who gets paid in QR codes and chicken tenders? Absolutely. Because I read, I observe, I absorb information, sometimes from experts, sometimes from guys at diners, sometimes from the feeling I get when I look at a postmarked envelope and think, not today, Satan. That's wisdom. All right, so before I go, let me leave you with my official tax strategy. File late enough to seem dangerous. Keep receipts like a raccoon with abandonment issues. Deduct anything that feels like suffering. Never trust a man with color-coded folders. And remember, your 1099 is not your enemy. It's a love letter from a nation that noticed your little road gig in Appleton, a badly written love letter, typed by a machine, sent without affection, but love nonetheless. So, on April 16th, when the birds are chirping and the IRS is stretching after a long day of ruining lives, you sit down, crack your knuckles, and whisper, Kevin Brennananski is coming for your tax return. And then you file something incomprehensible, not because it's correct, not because it's smart, but because somewhere deep in the marrow of every underpaid comic, there lives a tiny accountant made entirely of bitterness, deli coffee, and paternal disappointment. And that accountant deserves to be heard. All right, that's my time. You've been incredible. No, really, the applause is deafening. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your receipts. And if you can't make money, make paperwork. That was the joke, of course. Good night.